Hey friends, welcome back. I recently passed the Microsoft Cyber Security Architect Expert Level certification after around, I think it was a week of preparation work. And with that, in today's video, I'm going to share with you my experience, what I thought of the exam itself, and some of the content covered and the resources that I used to prepare. So if you are on the journey to prepare for your Microsoft or any of your Azure certifications, then this video might be helpful to you. And if you are still in the beginning stages of your cloud security career pursuing Microsoft, then I've done nearly all of the Azure security certifications, and I've got them reviewed on this channel as well. Okay, before we start, one thing to note is that this is an expert level certification. So you actually do require some other certifications before you can attempt this certification. So there are prerequisites and you can't get around this. Some of these certifications that you actually require include the SC-200, which is the Security Operations Analyst certification, or the AZ-500, which is the Security Engineer Associate certification. Both of these I have completed and I have shared them. They will all be linked in an Azure playlist here on my channel and down below, so you can check that out. This certification is aimed at kind of testing expert level architecture skills. What this means is when you think of an architect, you typically think of design and architecting solutions. Now, this is exactly what the certification covers. It's all of the design components of security solutions, services, configuration steps within the Microsoft Azure cloud environment that you will have to implement as an architect. So this is basically how the solutions align to best practice and priorities. If you think of the operations identity management capabilities, I think it's around 30 to 35% is covered. And then securing the infrastructure, there we're thinking about 20 to 25%. And then also looking at the application and data security, which is around 25%. Now, the exam cost in the US is $165 for taking the certification exam. This varies by location. For example, if you are based in South Africa, then the exam would cost $55 in South Africa. I believe that's the latest price. The passing score for the exam is 700, pretty standard for most of the Microsoft certifications, and a multiple choice for a lot of it. But some of it is also scenario-based exams. So there is an organization, they have multiple locations and they have multiple assets, identity services, remote workers across these locations, and you need to implement the best connectivity solution, the most secure, robust connectivity solution and cost-effective. So what would you do as an architect? And then you have some options of which you would choose. So you don't typically have to come up with anything, but you must choose the right answer in the scenario-based question. Then there's no hands-on labs in the exam, so it's pretty much selecting the right thing. So if you know your way around Azure, the services, the solutions, and being able to design certain solutions, then I think you'd be able to do fine in this exam. First up for me, as you would know if you've watched some of my other certification review videos, one thing that I find that I always do first, and I suggest that you do as well, is when you go onto the certification site, you look for the study guide and you open up the study guide and you download the study guide. The study guide gives you the specific skills that you need to know in order to ace the certification. Now, what does this mean? If it requires you to design secure infrastructure, in the study guide, there's certain components regarding secure infrastructure. And as long as you make sure that you actually know how that infrastructure works, how the portal looks, what kind of settings there is, what kind of settings you can enable, what are the options for you to secure infrastructure components, then you would be in a better position to answer a design question in the certification, and therefore you'd be in a better position to pass the certification. Okay, now let's move into the resources that I've used to help prepare for this certification. So first up, Microsoft Learn. It's free. They usually give a great study path, and as long as you can make sure that you actually complete the study path, you'd be in a good position to have the right amount of knowledge to basically go and attempt the certification. For this one specifically, given that if you've done SC-200, you might have Sentinel and Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Defender skills, which would really help you in this certification, but then you'd lack kind of the infrastructure security and past service security components, which you gain in the AZ-500. So I would say that if you have just recently completed your AZ-500 certification, this one is actually a really good next step, and to do it as soon as possible, because then you have already studied for most of these components and you just need to add a little bit of additional knowledge to this. But first resource, always the Microsoft learning path, and going through that will really give you a sense of all of the content that you need to know to be able to ace the certification. Now, the second thing that I specifically use to prepare for this certification is actually the Microsoft Cloud Security benchmarks. So knowing the cloud security benchmarks and those policies is really important. That's good. And then you also want to go to the Microsoft Cyber Security Reference Architectures site, and there you can really see the architecture components and how you would architect different components based on different requirements, and kind of what Microsoft thinks of best practice security reference architectures, which would of course help you in a Microsoft certification. Then finally, YouTube, the best learning platform of them all. John Seville, I went through John's study cram for SC-100 the day before the exam. I gained so much traction on a little bit of bits of nuggets and information that I actually needed to prepare for the certification, and it really helped me a lot to get through a lot of the content that I might not have seen because I kind of skimmed through the learning path itself. And then one other component for you to consider that I always do, and it really helps me to prepare for the Microsoft certifications, is to do measure up practice tests. Measure up can be really pricey, and I think that there might be other practice tests out there. I have not tried it personally. I will link some options in the description below, but please note, I can't recommend or say how close this content is to the actual exam content. I can only advocate for measure up, but if you don't have the appetite to go and invest in those kind of pricey practice exams, then I would say skip it altogether. But it really gives you a good kind of practice base for questions that you might be able to get in the actual certification exam. For me, the experience took me about 35 minutes. In 35 minutes, I completed all the questions and I passed first time around. I found it pretty standard compared to the AZ-500. The AZ-500 is probably a little bit more intriguing, but I think the one thing to note where you need to shift focus if you're looking to move beyond the AZ-500 and just obtain this one is that it is attainable, I think, with the knowledge of SC-200 and AZ-500 combined. However, you'll have a gap in the Microsoft, the MS certifications. So I personally did not do the MS-500, for example, and they asked for MS type knowledge. For the Microsoft Cloud, it's not only Azure. So I think there's where maybe I lacked a little bit of knowledge, but I still managed to get through the certification and pass the first time. So that's just a tip for you there. Also, I would say that shift your focus from configuration in AZ-500 to design in SC-100. That's a really important one that I noted throughout the exam. It was more around how would you design it. And it was also not around kind of what the solutions are, but it's more around what would you configure, right? So there are multiple options for configuration, for example, of a storage account or of network connectivity into Azure. Which one would you use based on a given scenario? Would you use ExpressRoute? Would you use an IPsec VPN? Would you use a hub and spoke kind of network setup with peered subscriptions between each other? Would you use private link, private endpoint? Would you use Azure DNS resolvers? What would you use? You get the picture. So it's more around design rather than how to configure it. All right, friends, and that is it. My quick review, my quick recap of the Microsoft SC-100 certification. Let me know if you are attempting this certification in the near future down in the comments below. Please reach out if you have any questions and you need any kind of help, or if you have any more specific questions related to the SC-100, I am happy to help you out with that. Check out my playlist for the other Azure certifications. And as always, if you found this video helpful, remember to subscribe, like the video. I share plenty of cybersecurity content, resources on all of my platforms. So definitely join the community and let's do cybersecurity together. Catch you next time, friends. Bye.